Welcome to the Health Sport Podcast, a podcast in which we discuss with athletes of all levels, health professionals, and key figures of the sport world. Before presenting this episode's guest, please consider sharing this with your friends and loved ones who could benefit from it. Also, I encourage you to subscribe to the show on whichever platform you're listening to. It helps the podcast grow. This episode's guest has been involved in biathlon for more than 20 years. He had raced, been a wax tech for the Canadian national team, and is now a national team coach. We discuss his unconventional career and this Olympic year goals for the Canadian national team. Please welcome Andrew Chisholm.
Welcome to the Health Sport Podcast with your host, Félix Tremblay.
Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm very glad that you accepted this invitation. Biathlon is my sport. And in French, I launched the podcast with JP Le Gallec. So to start again with biathlon, it's really meaningful for me. So thank you to accept it, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
So you have more than 20 years in biathlon. You started young and now you're the head coach. You must have a lot of beautiful memories from biathlon. Which one is your most beautiful memories?
Oh man, there's a lot of different ones because you think about the first time you shot clean in a race, shooting 5 for 5. And you kind of have that twice because I started on the air rifles, and I mean that's easy to do it there. But then the first time you do it, the 22. The first time I shot 10 for 10 was pretty exciting. That was actually in Bulgaria at the European Championships. I shot 9 out of 10 and 19 out of 20 so many times. That was the first 100%. Honestly, one of the maybe cooler memories I have was actually my last race. It was, nationals, North American Championships, and it was just a relay. It wasn't anything special, but we ended up winning that race, and I was on the podium with two of my teammates from the BATC. I was on the podium with some of my friends from British Columbia that were racing, and one of my good friends as well, Vincent Blais. He was with the Quebec team then, and that was quite cool. And then I jumped right into coaching and waxing right after that. And I mean, being there when Megan Banks and Leo Grambois were world youth and junior champions in 2017, that was really cool. It's so hard to choose just one. I've been pretty lucky to have some really cool memories in biathlon. It's like some really low moments too, just some like bad races and bad days. But you kind of need both to appreciate the good ones and the bad ones.
Yes. Have you ever shot 20 on 20?
No, I shot not in like an international race, but I think I did it once in a Calforex Cup, like an Alberta Cup or something like that. For sure, in some time trials, but never when it mattered.
Yeah. I think I've shot 19 out of 20 once. I missed my 17 target.
Yeah, like the times I shot 19 out of 20, it was always like I missed one in the second bout or something like that. It was something early. It was never like I got to the very end and missed the last one or something like that.
So when I missed the target, I was like, okay, now the stress is done. I don't have stress anymore, so I just cleaned the 3 other targets. And
exactly.
And my first 10 out of 10 was in PI during the World Championship trials.
Okay, yeah.
It was my first race at the junior distance. So it was the sprint 10K, 10 out of 10.
Good time to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So you've mentioned a lot of memories. What was your career? Can you introduce yourself? Like, how did you start biathlon and how you end up being head coach?
Yeah, so I started biathlon. I can't remember the exact first time because we did a couple tri biathlons and things like that. The first day I remember it was um, Dave Bradley and Colin Bell. I was in alpine racing actually, and it was on a slalom day. And they're at the bottom of the hill, and they just asked if you want to try biathlon. And yeah, we showed up a week later or something like that. We did the cross country skiing, we did the air rifle shooting. I want to say that was like 2002 or 2003. And then, yeah, I went through, the local racing, the provincial racing. I went to nationals the first time in 2008. Then, yeah, finished high school 2009. I moved to Canmore. I was with Canmore Nordic for 1 year. And I joined the BATC. I was on the BATC with Richard Baruda and a whole bunch of different athletes over the years until 2015. And while I was in Canmore at that time, I was coaching with Foothills Nordic as well, a little bit to help pay the bills. And then, yeah, I stopped racing in 2015, and right away I got a job coaching with the BATC that summer. And I also got a job working as a ski technician with the national team. So I split my work kind of three ways with the BATC in the morning, national team in the afternoons, and Foothills in the evenings. So it was really 100% biathlon for a while there.
Oh.
And then that winter, I was mainly a technician, but helping a little bit on the coaching side on the IBU Cup. And then the next spring, the head coach at the time, Matthias Arends, he offered me an assistant coaching job with the team. And then I took it. I think Richard was probably a bit sad to lose me then, just because we had made a plan that I would stay with him for a few years, but he understood that it's hard to say no to a national team job like that. So, yeah, then I was the assistant coach with the team until right up until the Olympics, and it was kind of the same split with the work, except it was coaching with the national team in the mornings, working with the skis in the afternoon, and then Foothills in the evening. And then also kind of at the same time, to help give me a full-time job, I was working as the kind of the technology or research and development coordinator for all the snow sports with On the Podium. So that was a joint job where we're just trying to collaborate between all the different sports and try to get everybody working in the same direction. And that resulted in some cool projects. We had some really good collaboration and great success with the skis in the 2022 Olympics. We had some good results in biathlon and also in cross country, ski cross, snowboard cross, and there was some really good and cool collaboration where all the technicians from all these sports would come together every night in the hotel that we were all staying at, and we'd be almost like sharing wax immediately there, just handing it over. And at some point, all these different sports were using all the same wax, which was pretty cool. And then sort of my last project with that before I transitioned to coaching was we did the Wax Tech U, which you were involved with. That's when we got, I think it was like 12 new technicians or something, and 12, something like, it was a decent amount where we're trying to, work on the education and build up the depth of our technicians a bit. And I think it was a pretty good curriculum. It was pretty broad. We were learning stuff about, the alpine skis, the snowboards, the stone grinding, the kick wax, trying to make some really good, well-rounded technicians. And yeah, it was going really well. But then that's kind of when everything took a bit of a shift in the career for me, because there's a suspension of the national team coach at the time, when I was actually on my way up to the first World Cup. So they asked me to step in on an interim basis. And that was just for that winter at first. But at the end of that winter, they offered me a full-time job being a national team coach. So that was a really hard decision to make. And I had some other changes in my personal life as well. So I ended up taking the job at that point and moving back to Canada because I had been spending a lot of time in Europe at that point. And then, I've been working with Helena and Justin pretty closely the last couple of years. And then this spring, Justin resigned as the head coach and the high performance director. And then, Helena and I just kind of took the reins. This was a bit last minute, but we've just been trying to balance the roles and responsibilities as best as we can at this point, and just make sure everything's getting done to the best of our abilities and best of our capacities, more so at this point, just because we've been a little bit short-staffed at Biathlon Canada this year, but we've made some good hires in the last couple of weeks, so we should be able to just worry about coaching and the athletes now.
Good. Yeah, I've been you've told the secret, so I've been part of the Wax University. I want to talk about it a little bit. So, how was your transition from Wax Tech athlete to Wax Tech? So, I'm sure you were waxing some athlete skis that you were competitor with the winter before, and now you're waxing their skis to race. How was this transition?
At first it was I wouldn't say it was tricky at first, because honestly a lot of the athletes were quite welcoming and excited to have somebody that was keen and that they knew well in the wax team, I think. Obviously I had a lot to learn at first, and I was pretty honest with them that I might make some mistakes sometimes, just because I was new. And when you're new at a job, you're probably going to do something stupid at some point. And I was pretty lucky to be well supported by the other technicians that I was working with. And honestly, it was really cool that it was almost seamless, that transition, just because, I don't know, our athletes had a lot of trust in the wax team back then, and they trusted that we would keep doing a good job if it was something new. And to be honest, we did do a pretty good job right away. And there's definitely some tough days where, we were a bit late with the skis, but they still got to the start line on time and things like that. But it was, trial by fire. But in terms of the actual working relationship with the athletes, it was really easy, to be completely honest.
And ski waxing looks so simple, but it's so complex.
Yeah. I was a bit lucky just because, I had some good experience waxing already, just because my old coach, Dave Bradley, who I mentioned before, he worked as a technician on the World Cup and at the Olympics. So he taught us what he knew when we were still in the club. But when I transitioned into becoming a wax tech after being an athlete, I had a whole summer to try and learn some techniques and everything. But what's kind of cool is, especially on the biathlon side, and I think on cross country too, is that especially on the IBU Cup, the technicians are not quite open source, but they're willing to chat and share about what has worked for them or hasn't worked for them. So on the IBU Cup, it's probably the best place to learn how to be a technician, just because you have kind of managing everything, like whether you're working with different brushes or waxes or hand structures, but you also don't have a lot of that stuff. So you've got kind of your 6 pieces, and you have to try and make them work in all these different ways. So you learn how to be a bit creative too. And that's where you really learn about the different application methods and uh, using different products, because it's not just like you take a product, look at the box, and that's how you put it on and it's going to work. Like there's definitely some finesse to working with the skis, with the brushes, with the irons, different temperatures. Yeah, you need some experience and some work with your hands a bit before you do that.
Yeah. And to be creative in the IBU Cup is very, very useful, and you have limited resources, but still it's like it's the second it's some athletes are there to make their place at the World Cup. So even though you don't have a lot, you need to do everything the best you can.
Yeah.
To so they can have the best skis.
Yeah, and it's still quite competitive on the IBU Cup, but it's even like the top teams, they don't have the resources to staff it the same as the World Cup. Like even the Norwegian team, they've got 2 dedicated technicians on IBU Cup. You go to the World Cup, they've got, I don't know, an army of them. It's crazy. But yeah, you figure out what you can do with the equipment you have, the materials you have, and the time you have, because that's ultimately what it turns into, is making the most of your time in the day. Because sometimes you have all of the materials that you could want to test, but there's only going to be 2 of you working with 8 athletes, and they still need their skis on time.
If I remember well, Canada, when I was on IBU, we were 2 wax tech for 8 athletes.
Yeah.
And the French were 3 for 14 athletes. 12 or 14 athletes.
Yeah, it'd be like probably for 12 athletes, and then
and sometimes the coach was coming up to try some skis in the morning, when he had times, but otherwise it was they're always busy, always.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're always busy in that job. It doesn't matter where you work.
So if there's listeners who doesn't know what is the ski waxing part of, can you explain it simply?
Yeah, I'll try. So, I mean, you've got these skis. Doesn't matter what brand it is, but the base of the ski is plastic, and it's structured in a certain way. You might think it's like completely smooth like glass, but there's actually some intentional structure put into there, and then we try to make that structure faster by applying, for lack of a better word, wax. A lot of the products that we use now are not actually waxes, but it's what it was used back in the day. So we'll have a lineup of waxes from a couple of different companies for some different conditions. And we'll have a set of skis that are all prepared the exact same way. And then the only variable that you change is either the wax that you're putting on those skis or how you're putting the wax on those skis. And you test each day trying to find the best wax for that condition. You can test all kinds of different ways, doing like a short test over and over again, or some longer tests, checking for distance to see how it holds up. But in the end, you're just trying to make your best guess for the conditions. That's the one part of it. The other part of it, to keep it simple, is that the athletes also have what we call a fleet of skis. And there will be lots of different types of skis. So it might all be from one brand, but they'll have different flexes. They'll have different materials on the base. They might have different structures, but the way that we keep those consistent is we wax them all the same, and we test them as well. Usually we try to do it with the athletes at some point because their feeling on the ski is really important. But we take the best ski that we can find for those conditions, the best wax that we can find for those conditions, and we put them together, and then we send it out for the athletes to race on.
So a wax tech doesn't only apply the wax, is also testing the skis.
Yeah. Like, depending on the day, it can be anywhere between 20 and 40 kilometers of skiing, and sometimes more, sometimes less, but 30 kilometers is usually a pretty good bet each day. So if you're not in shape at the start of the season, you're in shape at the end.
There was one time we were in Sweden, and we had the individual, so the longest race you can have in biathlon, so 15K for women and 20K for men. And we had like 2 days off or 1 day off between the races, and we put the wax on 2 pairs of ski and see how they last, how the speed lasts. So we could do, so the job that day was to ski 25, 30K to see if they're getting slower and slower with the distance, or they keep the same. So that was, it's weird to say that that's the job of the day, to ski 30K, but you have to be mindful of the speed and everything about the ski.
Yeah, that's, those are the days where it's maybe the harder part of the job.
In March 2023, IBU announced that the fluor ban, so you cannot use fluor anymore on the World Cup.
Yeah.
Have you? First question: How the Canadians have adapted to the fluor ban?
I mean, it was tough at first because we didn't have the same budget to do a lot of testing and research without the fluoro wax. So, like I was talking about before, we had basically decades of research on working with the fluoro wax, but when the new waxes came out, we're almost starting from scratch. So it was quite volatile in terms of the performance. So there were some good days, there were some bad days. Sometimes in the same day between the men's and the women's race, it could be good and bad. But as the products got a bit more stable, like as the wax companies have done more research and development on their own products and have come out with some easier stuff to work with, they have seen the performance getting a bit more stable with the skis. But there is still some disparity from time to time. Our guys had pretty good skis most of the time last year, I'd say. But it's not the, how would I say, it's not the same battle now, just because like the mistakes just seem to hurt people that much more. I wouldn't say we had any really bad days last year from what I saw, but you could see, like, for example, the Norwegian team at World Championships last year, they had such a string of bad races that they were apologizing in the media for the skis that they were producing for the athletes. And at the same, or in the same side, I remember at the end of the season in 2023, I think, end of season 2024 during the World Cup in Canmore, the German team was struggling so much with their skis. They were going around to every team that wasn't racing the mass start, was asking for help, like for something that they might be able to make better skis with. So it really humbled a lot of people and a lot of technicians when this fluoro ban started. But I think this year you should see a lot more parity with the skis instead of so many differences like we have seen, because I think that this ban had a much bigger effect than anyone in the high up, like in the IBU, was expecting. We all kind of saw it coming, that there's going to be some big mistakes and some big gaps on the skis, but I think it is going to keep getting better.
Do you think the fluoro ban closed the gap of wax knowledge between the the big nations and the smallest nations, or created a bigger gap, or the gap stayed about the same?
I think it made a much bigger gap, just because fluoro's been around since late 80s. So these technicians would work with teams, learn a lot, and then they'd start working with other teams. So the knowledge started spreading, and the experience would keep building and building and building. But with this sudden rule change, there was no benchmark of what was good and what was bad as we went into those seasons. So it was, you could see who had figured it out right away and who hadn't. And I think now that there are people switching teams, and now that the wax companies are learning more, the knowledge is going to start spreading more. It's just the way that it goes with stuff like that. As people hear secrets and they want to try something different, or they might figure something out that's really good one day. They have that reference to try and beat it in the future. But yeah, it was for sure not the same, because in the past you could see a team like Moldova have amazing skis, and they might not have the best athletes, but you could see that their skis were good, comparable or better than the top teams. But now, like, it was quite difficult for some time for those smaller teams who weren't able to put in that research.
So the performance with the flow band comes from money, experience, and a little bit of luck.
Yeah, I'd say only money, just because the teams who had the money could test a lot and work with a lot. But now the performance is just going to come with having experienced technicians at this point, because even with the fluoro, at some point, the companies would create a product they'd like, they give it to you, and they say, this is how we like it, but you can try a different way. And when you've worked as a technician for a while, you can think of some different ways to apply the product. But a lot of those techniques didn't work with the non-fluoro product. It was like, everyone was using like those roto fleece, like the hard one, or the roto corks. Those don't get used very much anymore at all, because it wasn't working with the way that the product applies onto the ski. So those were two kind of sure bets to try, and they just were no good anymore. So it's really moved more into like, those big fluffy fleeces and liquids, and it's probably going to change again this year. I don't know. I don't get to work with the skis very much at all, but I still try to learn and keep up with it. But it was changing almost week by week, with what was kind of best practice.
Oh. Is having a team of wax tech, a stable team of wax tech, a huge advantage?
Yes, it is. It's like with any team, whether it's, in an office or a sport or whatever, like when you have a group of people that have worked together for a long time, or at least familiar with each other and how they work and speak the same language, whether it's nomenclature or terminology, that's a huge, huge advantage, just because you're not wasting energy learning how to work with the people trying to do the same job. You just do the job, and all of your energy is going towards that improvement or attaining that goal. So there's something to be said about these teams that keep a consistent wax team year after year.
Yeah, it's. I found when I was on tour that it's a really big family, the wax techs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we don't spill always all the secrets, but after the races, when the event is done, everyone's gathered around and share beer, talk, and having fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's a big family.
Yeah. And, usually if someone is really struggling, like, you can probably, if it's someone you're familiar with, you can go ask them for like an idea, and they're not going to tell you everything. but they might ask, have you tried this or have you tried that? Or they'll talk about the skis that they were testing and were finding that were good. That's a big piece that a lot of people maybe don't realize too, is that all the ski brands have technicians that travel and support all the teams. So if you have sponsored athletes, these technicians from whether it's Rossignol or Salomon or Fisher, whoever, they'll be testing the same time that you are. And you can ask them like, oh, what's working for you today? And they'll tell you like, oh, this model of ski with this grind or whatever. So it lets you at least see if you're on track, or it gives you some reference to try and beat, because those guys are doing a really good job for sure. And they know their product really well. So it lets you at least make sure you're going in the right direction. And there's been a couple times for sure where we were testing something and then the guys came and told us, and we looked at was on our feet at the one, was like, ooh, we might have made a mistake. And then we run in, we go change something, we come back, and maybe we were right in the first place, or we also maybe had to make a shift all of a sudden. So it's a piece of support that I know that our guys really appreciate.
You talk a little bit about not doing the ski part, ski waxing during the racing. So now you're a national team coach. What is your job during the race?
During the actual race, that's maybe the more easy part of the day, because I mean, we, once they cross that start line, they're on their own at that point. We can give splits, we can cheer for them. In the longer races, we can show them a correction for the shooting. But yeah, during the race, it's you're just kind of along for the ride at that point. But in the lead up to the race, we might be testing skis a little bit with the athletes, or we might just be skiing the course. Or if one of us is on the range, we're doing the zeroing, we're paying attention to the wind, we're making sure the athletes are comfortable with the wind and the light, so that when they come in for that first shooting, they can take those shots with complete confidence.
Are you always behind the scope still?
Quite a bit. The thing is the last few years, we've been only traveling with one coach on World Cup. And so then you kind of have to be behind the scope, because you need to be able to show the athletes that feedback when they're shooting and zeroing and all that. And we might take some time and ski with them on course. But last year when I was on IBU Cup, I had an assistant coach with me. So I was able to spend more time on the skis and go on course and do some course review and work on the tactics. But on the World Cup, that wasn't possible. At World Champs, all three of us were there. So I was able to spend more time on the skis and work with the athletes there. But now we've decided that there will always be two coaches on World Cup. So my guess is I'll probably be splitting about 50-50 my time either behind the scope or on the skis. But we're going to decide that pretty soon here in the next week or so, how we want to do that.
So this spring, as you said, you and Elena have been named national team coaches. Mm-hmm. So how do you split the work as coach?
I mean, we've been pretty collaborative on all of it, to be honest. It's almost like case by case how we split the work now. Like I took a bit more on with the bigger picture with the YTP and the shooting plan. So the big document with all the numbers with how it's going to load week by week all the way through. And then for each training block, Lana and I sit down and we put together the details of each week, like which workout is happening each day, making sure that each athlete is going to be having the correct number of hours planned. We haven't been able to shoot a lot this summer, unfortunately, just because the stadium's been under construction again in Canmore.
Okay.
But we'll work together on the shooting plans as well, so like for each session. And we do a lot of it together. We really try to make sure that we've both gotten our input in, and we're also accomplishing what we want to do with each session while staying on track with the bigger plan that I've gotten putting together.
Are they renovating the shooting range or the stadium?
Yeah, both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah, they've moved the tunnel. The shooting range is under construction. There's the new building there. Yeah, it's been quite a mess there for the last few years with all the construction and everything, but it's getting better. I think it'll be finished next year, but we'll see how it's going to look this winter.
Where does the athlete shoot during that time?
Well, we've been going up to Mount Shark, so it's about 45 minutes away up past the Nordic Center into the Spray Valley. Yeah, we'd go there a couple times a week, but we can't roller ski up there. So we've had to go away for some camps in Prince George and Whistler, and we were just in Utah with the American team doing a training camp there too. Yeah, we haven't done as much combo training as any of us would have liked, but we've managed. And then we do some work with the SCAT as well, the laser shooting.
That's nice.
Yeah.
The SCAT.
Yeah, we're getting some work done still. It's just not traditional.
Yeah, and still it's not the best scenario, but the Norwegian, I've heard that they had some problem also with the shooting range in Oslo. So
yeah, that was more about a safety thing, I think, because I think the athletes kept leaving their rifles out, and then the police came and found them, and then they shut it down or something like that. It was I can't remember exactly, but a lot of the athletes had to go train somewhere else for a while.
But they have a little bit more biathlon centers.
Yeah, just a few
per square feet.
Yeah,
just a few. Is there any changes that you and Ellen brought this year?
The big change that we have done is we want to engage the development team more. Before, that team was just camp based. So what we did this year was we went through our training plan and we identified weeks where it would make sense to invite the development team in to work with us. So if they were in Canmore or wanted to make a trip to Canmore, they could come train with the senior team as a normal training week. So we've done a lot more with that, and we had pretty good involvement, I'd say. Like, not all of the athletes wanted to join, but we had some that took every opportunity that they could. But it was also a bit tough trying to entice people to come to Canmore when there was no shooting range. So there was a few athletes that were keen to work with us in Canmore, but we were just like, I think it's better if you don't come, to be honest, just because you'd only be roller skiing here, and we'd love to have you here for that, but it's maybe not worth your effort right now. But that's maybe the biggest change. We changed some of the ways that we do the intensity and the periodization with that, just a bit more focus changes depending on the kind of intensity, whether it's, zone 3 or zone 4, and just really making sure that that's being done with purpose. Not that it wasn't necessarily being done before, but it's more of a format that we feel comfortable with. We've done a lot more intensity than in the past as well. And then, yeah, for the most part, the athletes have also just done more training hours in general and have completed more than in the past. So just kind of harder, but it's just more how we delivered it than anything else, and the types of intensity that we do too. It's not the same kinds of workouts that we've been doing the last few years. Might be a bit more traditional and boring looking than what had been happening before, but that's more where I feel comfortable with delivering the intensities like that, just to have good control over them, knowing exactly about the work that's being done. So it gives us a better chance to monitor the athletes well, and then just see that they are actually improving. And there's some times where we definitely were a bit on the edge with some of them with fatigue over the summer, but the recovery that we had planned in, they seemed to respond well to it for the most part. So just not, we didn't want to do a major change right away, just because from what I've seen and what I learned quite quickly working in sport is you don't want a revolution, you want an evolution. That's something I say quite often. So you can have an idea of how you want things to be, but if you try to change it too much all at once, some people might buy into it right away. Some might just completely reject it. So it's more about just making these gradual and meaningful steps more towards where you want things to be. And all of a sudden, if you look back 3 years, it's going to look completely different than where you're working now. But you just have to make sure that you're making those changes with purpose and in a sustainable way. So then they'll actually last after you make those adjustments or shifts.
And like, how much hours are in the? How many hours are the year training plan for the more senior athletes?
I mean, we've got it. It always depends on what they've done in the past. Just because we don't want them to do a major jump up. But it's anywhere from like, I think they're all going to do at least 700 hours this year. Some a bit closer to 800, but it was like, I think the low end was maybe 690. But it's just more, we had some athletes who didn't have the same training volume over the years, whether it's because of school or whatever, and some who've just been training for a longer time and have handled more from year to year. And that's more where, like, I think you just need to be careful, because just doing the hours for the sake of doing the hours isn't going to get you there. But for sure, you just want to make sure that you are making a good progression from year to year without doing too much, so you're actually able to absorb and recover that volume that you're putting in. But it's also, we have to take into account that sometimes you make the plan and then life happens. Like Adam Reynolds got married this year, and planning a wedding is huge and a big stress. So he managed it really well for the most part, but there's just some residual fatigue at times, and so we just made an adjustment, and then he recovered and got back to normal training. But that's just like a really basic. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna put her off the table here. She's not supposed to be up here. Yeah. Yeah, like, I think this is what Trond Nystad, he's a Norwegian coach, and he's a guy who's been teaching my IBU courses the last couple of years. And what he always likes to say is the best thing you can do first is to make a plan, but the worst thing you can do is only stick to the plan. I think it needs to kind of be a bit more of a framework after that, because if you make a plan in April and you haven't adapted something to whatever may or may not be happening to your athletes by the time you're in October, then you're just following it blindly, right? So that's that really stuck with me. I mean, there was all kinds of great things we learned too, but that was a really basic thing, even though we all know that. But I think it's important that you are not so married to your plan that you can't make the changes as you need to.
Is it that if this year is Olympic year?
Yeah.
Did it add stress on your part to be even more successful with the training plan?
Yes and no. Like, I mean, we ran last year as kind of like a test run with everything that we wanted to do with the team in the training year, and what we tried during the winter last year as well with the team to see how it worked. So it wasn't quite like a repeat of the training year, but we had a good plan in place already. And we kept good track of what was and wasn't working. We could see where we had like the drops in performance when we didn't want them to happen. So we did some good work with the athletes as well at the end of the year, but also with our IST, our integrated support team, with our scientists there. And we could see that there's a couple of low-hanging fruit that we could change that wouldn't have it wouldn't be a risky change to make, but it could mean that we might have a bit better performance this year. And then, I wouldn't say in terms of the training it had any added stress. My biggest added stress this year was I had to take over the team leader role, which it's just a lot of meetings and planning that you wouldn't ever think about for the Olympics, like having to make the long list of athletes. So it's like athletes and staff. So like we haven't chosen our Olympic team, right? And you have to think about anybody who might be able to make it, any of your wax techs who might be going, any of your massage therapists who might be going, maybe your doctor's going to come. You never know. So you have to make this list of people and then get all the information for them. And it was like it had to be done by August 15th. So that there's just little things like that, and like organizing parking passes, and it's stuff I wasn't planning on having on my plate at this time. But it's in the grand scheme of things, I'm not super stressed for the Olympics because I know that we have a plan in place where the athletes should be able to perform to their abilities. So we're just going to see what happens.
And what would be a successful season for Team Canada this year?
I mean, it's pretty hard to say just because, we've had some athletes who had like their first World Cups ever last year. And we do have some pretty green athletes in the grand scheme of things. I think in the relays, if things go well and the stars align, we could have a good performance by the men or the women at the Olympics or at a World Cup this year. Because we saw, glimmers of brilliance last season in the World Cup with, in rope holding for the men, for example, when they went 0+6 and they were near the front for a while there. Our women are quite solid, so they have a chance too. There's a couple races this year where we had women fighting near the top, or some of our men where it's like they just needed to hit 100%, and then it could have been an amazing race. But that's biathlon. So it's I don't like promising or predicting, exact results, right? Because I think it's even if you listen to that podcast interview with Campbell, right? He goes a bit too extreme and says like he thinks that goal making is stupid, but I mean we all knew that he could get a podium someday last year, but for him to get it at World Champs, that was a big surprise
Incredible.
even for him. It was incredible. It was super cool. But to have a breakthrough moment like that at the big championships, that's really rare. So what I can say is I think that all of our athletes have shown things over and over again that they could, be in the top 20 or top 10, even in the flowers. But we're just working on making our own luck by just trying to find a bit more consistency in their performances, whether it's their shooting or their ski speed. And I think we've done the best that we could with what we have this year without, completely overloading them. And I think it'll be exciting for that to see the work that we've done this year to start to come to fruition in the winter time.
I found that biathlon sometimes can be one of the most stressful sport to watch.
Mm-hmm.
If it's your first time you hear about biathlon, go watch the final mass start of the women of the World Cup 2025.
Yes.
You're gonna be on the edge of your seat for every second of the race.
Yeah, that was
I watched
a crazy
live
race.
and I was, it's not describable. It's everything happened. Everything happened in this race. So
yeah, we won't spoil it for anybody, but it's a great race to watch. If you have to watch one, it's a good one.
Yeah. I have one funny question for you.
Okay.
Which biathlon stadium in the world is your favorite?
Ooh. That is a good question. Antolz is an easy one. Like, it's beautiful there, and the Canadian team usually does pretty well there too. I think that maybe one of the cooler experiences I've had was in Otepää in Estonia, just because I have lots of family there too. So it's a bit of it's sentimental for me there too. But with the crowds there, they cheered for everybody, and they were going absolutely crazy for every skier as they were finishing, as they were shooting, as they were going across, different parts of the course. So that was really cool to see there. In Grand Bornand, it's quite crazy there too. The fans are so loud, and they just line the courses. It's just like this wall of sound everywhere. I think that's quite interesting too, and fun. But in terms of the absolute chaos and maybe the craziest biathlon stadium, it's in Novo Mesto in the Czech Republic. That's the loudest one for sure.
They had the world champ 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, they had the world champs there, and like just the way that the stadium is made, it's just like a big amphitheater. So when they cheer and they're screaming, it's so loud there. And there's so many people there all the time because they just come through the woods and they kind of sneak in different places. So you never actually know how many people there, but there's usually a lot of people there, especially on the weekends. And that's a really fun stadium to go to as well.
Nice. Go watch some races in those stadium if you can, if you want to see it. But otherwise, if you're in Europe, go see at those places.
Yeah, all the venues usually put on a good show in Europe.
Yeah. I have one question I've asking every guest I have on the show. Mm-hmm. It's, what does it mean to you to be healthy?
Be healthy. That's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects of health. There's your physical health. There's your mental health, and they're both equally important. So I think, the easy one is your body in good shape? Like, are you hurting? Are you feeling sick every day or not? Can you breathe normally? Are you able to walk up and down the stairs without, having to take a break or something like that. I think that's important for sure. Um, I think for me, your overall health is the ease at which you're able to go through your life. And, that's whether if you can be playing with your kids or doing the sports that you love or all the activities that you love, but also if, you don't have the monkey on your back, that's stressing you out and giving you some anxiety, and that's something that lots of people do have to live with and manage by themselves. But if you're able to come up with the strategies or the methods to live with decent mental health and good physical health, to me, that's being healthy. I think what's maybe interesting that lots of people don't think about is, high performance sport, we do lots of healthy habits, but it's not actually that healthy because you're pushing your bodies to such extremes all the time. Like you're at risk of injury, you're at risk of getting sick. You're really pushing your body to the limits, and it's not to say that being active and all that isn't healthy, but to that extreme, to be a high performance athlete, it's not great for you in the grand scheme of things. That's why people don't race at that level until they're 60 or 70 years old, right? Like when lots of these athletes finish their careers, they might need some surgery or some physio for a long time to deal with these ongoing injuries, and it's tough. And I don't envy that of the athletes. Like I think that there's a lot of cool things and amazing things about being an athlete, but putting your health on the line like that's a tough thing to do, and I have to commend them for that for sure.
That's one thing I'm seeing a lot in my episodes in French when I have athletes. Is that you need to love your
Mm-hmm.
sport, whatever sport you're doing. If you want to achieve a really high level, you
Mm-hmm.
need to love it like a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
because you're gonna think about it 24/7.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point that you bring up too, is that there's being the 24-hour athlete and knowing when you have to take that time to recover, but being able to really turn the sport off. Because if you do get stuck thinking about it intensely for 24 hours a day, then it's going to be tough to recover from that hard training. And I think that the best athletes are able to live their life in a way that, at least in the back of their mind, there's the sport going on, but they have to be able to, watch a movie or read a book and at least turn off the pressure a bit, because otherwise that career won't be sustainable. And it's important to have some kind of hobby or private diversion away from the sport so that you're able to be really focused for those couple of hours a day when you are doing your training or getting your therapy done. You need that balance. The balance isn't, I was just going to say, the balance isn't the same as for, let's call it, the normal or regular people of the world, where having that work-life balance, like you really want that to be even. The balance for a high performance athlete is for sure going to be more towards being a high performance athlete and having that intense focus, but they need to have something to take off a little bit of pressure, or else they're going to get themselves really tired really quick.
And sometimes when you do something else of your sport, reading a book, watching a movie, if you really love that sport, when you're going to come back, you're going to be saying, I'm happy to do it again because
Absolutely.
I took a break, I switch off, but now I'm ready to come back. You're always thinking. And there's something with athletes development, usually with high school students. If you do sport and studies, I don't know what's in English, but in French, we have like half the day in class, half the day in sport.
Yep.
When you finish that, or university athletes, college athletes, when they stop, they're like, what am I without the sport? I was an athlete from 12 years old to 22, 23 years old. And when you stop, if you didn't have any other interests outside of your sport, you become a little bit lost sometimes. Some athletes feel it too.
Yeah. And that's, like the Canadian Sport Institute, they're trying to help athletes be a bit better equipped for when they maybe are thinking about stopping, or at least as they go through careers, to make sure that they have something else other than the sport. It's not to say that you can't be involved with the sport for the rest of your life, but it's, if sport was taken away from somebody tomorrow, or like, myself, for example, what would you have and what would you be? And I think that's something really important to have an answer for yourself. And that's part of being a healthy athlete, I think, because it's the same with, you see it a lot of times where there's so many of these athletes who all they think about is the Olympic medal. And they fight for it, and they fight for it. And then they get the Olympic medal and nothing really changes for them all of a sudden. And then it's a big spiral because all they were thinking was that this one thing was going to solve everything for them. But most of the time it doesn't. And that's where it's like you said, they're like these students, they weren't sure of what they were now that they aren't being an athlete anymore. And I think, it's something that we maybe don't do as explicitly, but we really try to make sure that our athletes are at least thinking of something outside of their sport.
It's at that point that enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Rather than the result. You can be proud of the result and everything that happened, but enjoy the process, because if the result is not there, at least you're going to have fun.
Yeah, you have to. Or else, because the results don't always come, but the process will always be there, no matter what you do.
Yeah. When the episode's going to come out, it's going to be early November. So what's coming up for Team Canada in this time?
Yeah, so on October 20th, we have the Frozen Thunder start. So that's the stored snow in Canmore, and they roll out a couple kilometers of skiing, and people come from all over North America to get on that right away. And then, the first full week of November 4th to 8th, in that time period, we're going to have 3 selection races that will decide our World Cup and IBU Cup teams for the start of the season. And that will really set the stage for the rest of our Olympic team selection later on this winter.
So if you're watching or listening, check out Team Canada website.
Yep.
Biathloncanada.ca.
Yep, exactly. Biathloncanada.ca. And then they should have some stuff on the Instagram as well, the Biathlon Canada official. And then I think results will be on zone4.ca as well. But that I'm never sure of.
Good. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you, Felix.
Thank you to have listened to this episode of the show. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, leave a rating and review. It really does help. And for more content, please follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. See you next time.